Well, it's hard to beat that by way of introduction, but I want to welcome you all here to the SAI Computing Conference. It is an amazing gathering with the likes of so many different people. I welcome so many individuals from so many different countries. It's such a pleasure, and I hope that we can converge on a number of themes. I'm also hoping that if I give a good talk, perhaps Lars will give me one of these magnets. But I know I have to earn it, so I have to work very hard for this. Now, I want to tell you, I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I have been there for most of my life. But I want to tell you about the convergence of life and the world. And here we have so many different countries represented. I was born in Cairo, Egypt. My family is Armenian, and there was a large Armenian group of people there in the mid-50s until the British pulled out and Abdel Nasser came in. And one of the things that went with the British was freedom. And my parents, I'll never forget how much they gave up because everything was nationalized. The banks were nationalized and my parents couldn't withdraw their money. And they left literally in the dead of the night to take their children. I have two older brothers. And as I mentioned, I was 4 years old. And my two grandmothers and 8 suitcases, and we left. And I'll never forget those stories that my mother used to tell me, because when I grew up and I had an appreciation of the story, I said to my mother once, I said, "Mother, what would possess you to leave such a charmed life that you had there? They had everything." And my mother looked at me like I was crazy, and she said, "My daughter, we did it for you, for your brothers, to raise you in freedom." Being of Armenian heritage, freedom is extremely important. And they could not tolerate the idea of living in a country where their children wouldn't be free. So I moved to Canada, and we're very grateful. So when I talk to you today about privacy, you might be wondering, why is a privacy person talking to us at a computing conference where we're going to be talking about AI and machine learning and algorithms, all of which I will, of course, touch upon. I want to draw the intersection between personal information and the technologies that we develop together, that are emerging in terms of the Internet of Things. And what I want to put on your mind, just raise your mindset about any time you collect information that is called personal information, which is personally identifiable data that have personal identifiers linked to it, like name or social security number, a particular citizenship number, anything. That's when you have to address the privacy concerns. And it's not just me who's raising this. I was a privacy commissioner for close to 20 years in Ontario, Canada. And I've worked with my colleagues all around the world, fellow commissioners on data protection authorities. And what becomes abundantly clear is that in the emerging, advancing world of technology, when personal information issues aren't addressed, it comes back to haunt you because the concerns don't go away. People still want to be free. They want to retain control over their information. And yet, we have this new emerging world of technology, big data, data analytics, Internet of Things. How can we do both? And what I'm hoping I can rid you of, should you, by any chance, happen to hold those thoughts, I want to rid you of the zero-sum view of the world. Zero-sum simply means you can only have an increase of one interest, always to the detriment of another interest, such that the two total to a sum of zero. In my world, when it's, say, privacy versus public safety, I can assure you it's never privacy that wins, nor should it be. But what I reject is the proposition that privacy must suffer. So what I hope to advance to you is a model which is called positive sum, which just simply means you can have two positive interests in two divergent areas at the same time. It takes a lot of creativity and innovation, but the outcome is a much better result, both in terms of privacy and data analytics, privacy and business interests, privacy and other types of functionality. You can do both. You get a win-win proposition, which is far superior from the win-lose. That's what I hope to talk to you about today. So we have a lot to cover. I always start with what is privacy, because a lot of confusion about that. And then we'll go through, of course, security is absolutely essential to privacy. And we'll talk about IoT, machine learning, and what is now being called the tyranny of algorithms, which I find very interesting. So, what is privacy? There's so much confusion. Tell you what privacy is not. It's not about hiding something. It drives me crazy when people say, well, privacy is about, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, right? Wrong. I assure you, history has been replete with examples, but it is not a matter of having something to hide. That's not what privacy is about. Privacy is all about control, personal control relating to the uses of your personal information. Remember, personal information belongs to you, the data subject to whom the information relate. You will share it with others, with the government, with companies, etc., but you are the person to whom the information relates, and the notion of being free to choose how that information is used is, I hope, not becoming a fleeting concept. The Germans have a wonderful term called Informational SelfDetermination. I love this term, and it is no accident that Germany is the leading privacy and data protection country in the world. It is no accident that they had to endure the abuses of the Third Reich, and when that ended, they said, never again. Never again will we give up our freedom. Never again will we give up our privacy. And they have stood proud ever since then. They are amazing. So the notion of self-determination, which was a value that was considered to be so important in Germany that it was enshrined in their constitution in 1983. The notion of self-determination is that you, as the individual data subject, you should decide how your information is used and in what context. You see, context, ladies and gentlemen, is critical to privacy. Only you will know a particular context associated with some information. I often use myself as an example in this. I think you would probably agree that health information, medical data, is probably among the most sensitive type of information that exists. And you would never say that an individual's information should be broadly broadcast. I made a decision in 2004 in my jurisdiction in Ontario. We were introducing a new law called PHIPA, the Personal Health Information Protection Act. It was an excellent law. And I was doing what I always do. I was going around to stakeholders, telling them how great a law this was, talking to hospitals and doctors, etc. And I was surprised. I wasn't getting the positive, responsive response that I normally get. I was getting a cold response, and that was very upsetting because this was a really important law. So after maybe the second or third time that I spoke, I stopped midway in maybe my third talk, and I said, I'm going to stop now. Please, I'm going to ask you, you tell me what I'm doing wrong because I'm not getting the message across. And this is far too important an area for me not to convey how wonderful this new law is. And this one young doctor stood up and he said, look, you're probably a good privacy commissioner, but you don't know what it means to be a patient. You don't know what it means, and I got it. They thought I was just speaking as a privacy commissioner and not as anyone who'd ever been a patient. And I made a decision that no one else could have made other than myself. I said to him, are you kidding me? Do you know how many surgeries I've had? Neurosurgery, brain surgery, 3, 4, 5, probably 5 now. I have a pump that's been embedded in my head. It goes down a tube called a shunt, and cerebrospinal fluid flows there, and I have this and that. And his jaw dropped. But I thanked him profusely. I said, thank you so much, sir, for sharing that with me, because you think I don't know what it means to be a patient. I bet you I've been to emergency far more times than you have, where my head is exploding, and I'm just saying, take care of my head. Take the pain away. And even I'm not thinking about privacy. So I know what it means to be a patient. But what if I could give you delivery of health care services with a cloak of privacy wrapped around it? What if I could give you both privacy and, of course, healthcare services as your priority? And he said, of course, we'd love that. That's the model that has emanated in my jurisdiction. But I believe it would not have happened as successfully if I hadn't disclosed that I'd been a patient. And it was my choice. No one else could make that choice. And I'm so delighted I did it because all of a sudden they related to me differently. Everything changed, and the law, you'll be happy to hear, has been working beautifully ever since then, and we've had a good news ending. So I give that as an example of context. You will never know the context associated with certain information. Some information which may be sensitive to you may not be sensitive to someone else at all, and vice versa. Let me tell you about privacy by design for a few moments. I call it the decade of privacy by design. This is something I developed many years ago, but in 2010, at our international conference of privacy commissioners have an international conference once a year, usually in Europe. In 2010, it was in Jerusalem. And at the end of a 3-4 day conference, we have a half-day closed session where we vote on things, resolutions advanced by individuals. And I advanced a resolution that year on privacy by design, which is all about proactively embedding the necessary privacy protective measures into technology so that you can prevent the privacy harms from arising, not just address them after the fact, as we privacy commissioners usually do. And my fellow colleagues, to my amazement, were 100% in agreement. As I said, it was unanimously passed. And I think the reason for that, we realized that in this world of ubiquitous computing, online connectivity, social media, wireless wearable devices, it was impossible to simply address privacy harms after the fact. What I wanted was a model of prevention, much like a medical model, where, can you imagine going to a doctor and they say, yeah, you've got the beginning of cancer developing, we'll just see how far it goes, and then if it gets really bad, we'll offer you some chemotherapy afterwards. I mean, what an unthinkable proposition. I wanted it to be equally unthinkable that we would allow privacy harms to develop and then only address them after the fact by means of offering some system of redress or remediation. And my fellow commissioners agreed with me. So privacy by design has been quite successful. And again, I just want to give you the example of the iceberg. I often use this. What privacy commissioners realized in 2010 is if we were seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of privacy harms, we were lucky. That the majority of the harms, which were exploding, were largely going unknown, unchallenged, unregulated. And that's why we knew that after the fact, regulatory compliance was no longer sufficient. We've had great success with privacy by design. It's been translated to 38 languages. And not a week would go by when I was commissioner that some jurisdiction wouldn't approach me with what they've been doing and how they've been doing it. And if by any chance you represent a language that does not appear on here, please come and talk to me afterwards. I love spreading the word as widely as I can. Now, one of the basics of privacy by design is what I referred to earlier, abandoning zero-sum. It's as simple as getting rid of the verses and substituting and. I cannot tell you how much this has helped me in the work that I have done, but it helps everybody. I remember years ago, the European Biometrics Commission approached me and they asked me to be on their board. And I was honored, but I was surprised. I said, you have hundreds of wonderful privacy commissioners. Why are you coming to me? And they said, it's simple. They said, you don't say no to biometrics. You say yes to biometrics, and here are the privacy protective measures I insist you put on it. They said, we may not like that, but we can try to accommodate and make the best of it. But if you just say no to our area of interest, then you can't have a seat at the table. And that's been my experience again and again. I work with a wide range of people, ranging from companies who are marketers to extensive technology companies and others, just showing that you can and must do both, privacy and. It's all about and fill in the blank. I'm going to walk you through very quickly the 7 foundational principles of privacy by design. A lot of them I've already touched on. It's all about prevention. Embedding it into design is, if you bake it into the code, then it becomes an essential component of what you're doing, of what the system is offering. It's not an afterthought. It grows with the program, with what you're offering. Privacy is the default setting. This is probably the most difficult principle to accomplish, but the strongest measure you can offer. Privacy is the default, says that you, as the data subject, you don't have to ask me for privacy. I'm giving it to you. I'm embedding it automatically into the program. I can offer you privacy assurance from the beginning, from the get-go. Customers love this, I can assure you, and they thank you with their repeat business, and it attracts opportunity. That's why I always say privacy by design gives you a competitive advantage. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but it is well worth the effort. This morning, I do a lot of tweets, and I was checking my tweets and checking the tweets I read, and one of them was that there were 100 different steps you had to take using your iPhone to protect privacy in all these different areas. I thought, I mean, give me a break. Who's going to do that? It's ridiculous. Even I don't do all that anymore. I mean, life is short. So embedding privacy as the default gives it to you automatically. You don't have to worry about you forgot 2 of those 100 settings or something. It is embedded in the system. It's the strongest measure you can have. I've talked a lot about full functionality. I cannot emphasize it enough. Let me speak for a moment about security. Privacy subsumes a much broader set of protections than security alone. But if you don't start with strong security in this day and age of daily cyber attacks, you're not going to have any privacy. So you have to have end-to-end security, full lifecycle protection from the time of the data collection through the use of the data and to the secure destruction of the data. You've got to have it all. It's absolutely critical. Visibility and transparency is so important. I always like to remind companies that, and the government, it's not your data. You may be collecting personal data from customers or citizens, but you don't own the data. The data belong to the data subject. So at the very least, let them know what you're doing with the data, and it will help you because no one knows the data better than the data subject. They will be in the best position to bring mistakes to your attention, corrections that need to be made. Accuracy of the data is absolutely critical. And of course, respect for user privacy. If you keep it user-centric, you will be way ahead in so many ways. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the essence of privacy by design. Whenever I talk about it, it seems like motherhood. It's like not a big deal. Apparently, it is a big deal because things like privacy is the default and positive sum, they're certainly not the industry standard now, and they will give you so much more privacy. And yet, you have to take some measures to do it. So that's one of the issues that we'll discuss. Just so you know, I don't want you to think this is like just a theoretical construct or an academic formulation. It's not. It's real. It's on the ground now. Before I left being commissioner, we wrote this paper on operationalizing privacy by design. It's a compilation of about 22 papers that we had done during my tenure as privacy commissioner, where we partnered with the leaders in the field. Think of any major tech company, Microsoft, Intel, IBM, HP, Oracle. There are many I'm leaving out. We partnered with them to show in particular areas, these are the areas we identified, how privacy and the area could work together and in fact enhance the deliverables offered. So these are some of the areas and issues I want you to be aware of. And this is just the beginning. As they say, you ain't seen nothing yet. Now when I'm at Ryerson University, I get so many people coming up to me, companies who I'm meeting with. I just met with several of them, one of them called SecureKey, another one called Zeotap, which is based in Berlin. We're partnering together to do more papers together to show how doable this is and how the return is excellent for both the technology and the company. And of course, privacy and security by design, you need both. These are papers we did with Oracle. And this is one example. Japan was one of the early adopters of privacy by design, and their JIPTEC, the Japanese Information Processing Development Center, wrote me before I left, and they said that their people are insisting on the principle of positive sum. So I thought, if the Japanese can grasp the term privacy by design in terms of positive sum, then surely the rest of us can do so equally. And just if you're interested, I have some of these brochures at the back. We are now offering privacy by design certification because there is a demand for certification. Companies want to demonstrate that they're actually following privacy by design and gaining from it, which is awesome. And so I've partnered with Deloitte because Deloitte is really good at what I say, looking under the hood, actually looking and auditing and assessing all the requirements of various processes such as privacy by design. So if you're interested, take a look at that. That's a paper that Deloitte has put out. And just one other thing, if you're interested, this is in your packages. I've been asked extensively to offer an online course on privacy by design, some of the intricacies, and I've just completed it. We're offering it in September, so you'll see one of these things in your packages. If you have any interest, take a look. Okay, let me get to the interesting stuff now. So let me talk about technology. I'm going to talk about IoT. Internet of Things is growing. Some people are calling it the Internet of Everything. Wireless wearable devices, the quantified self, and home automation that can be connected with your quantified self. Everything's out there. And people have said to me, you know, this is like the Wild West. There's no way you're going to be able to address privacy issues because that genie has left the bottle. It's running wild. It's great. And I just laugh. And I laugh because people have said that about big data and data analytics, and it's come back to bite them. So I say, sure, go ahead, do it. And what are we seeing now in North America, Canada, the United States? We're seeing enormous concerns with IoT and how it is doing unbelievable things it was never intended to do, and people don't like it. See, the one thing we have to remember, all this technology, which is great and amazing, it's connected to people, to humans who have certain preferences about things like their personal data. And last time we looked, we still live in free and democratic societies, and we wish to preserve that model, largely speaking. So let's talk about IoT. Where's privacy? Well, it really doesn't exist. Near the end of this, it says, talking about mobile health and fitness apps, and it says, but it's not always clear if a user's data is kept confidential. It's not always clear. Actually, it is clear that it's not kept confidential. The Semantic looked at this, and they found that of the wireless wearable products that they looked at, all hardware-based devices were 100% trackable, 100%. While this does not come as any great surprise, it is somewhat disappointing. 100% trackable, really? And we're talking about trackable by unauthorized third parties, of whom you have certainly not given any consent to. This is a paper that came out last year that talked about the importance of incorporating as a default standards-based privacy and security controls into their product infrastructures relating to IoT. So the need for this is beginning to grow, and how important it is for wearable manufacturers, regardless of the nature of the device, to incorporate some kind of standards-based privacy and security, and you see the word default. The reason default is clear is because, especially with IoT, with wearable devices, et cetera, the individual is not going to have an opportunity to enter in and say, no, I want to opt out of this collection practice. That ship has sailed. Default will have to be the standard. The Federal Trade Commission in the United States is the body that oversees privacy-related compliance and activities. And they did a study of 12 mobile health and fitness apps. Even I was surprised at this. Of the 12 that they looked at, the information was being shared with 76 different unauthorized third parties. 76. When this came out, people were just freaking out. They could not believe that this was happening with health and fitness apps. So the FTC is going to great lengths to meet with developers and ensure that the necessary safeguards for protecting personal health information reside in these devices. It's just the beginning. Increasingly, you're also finding that this common privacy standard that is being desired is in the works. It's certainly not close to completion, but what they're talking about is that whether this explosion amounts to the 1.7 trillion annual spend depends on the value this IoT delivers to users and trust in its privacy and security. Again, this morning when I was checking my tweets, there was an article that talked about, I have 5 minutes left? Okay, I have probably 30 slides left, so I'm going to go really quickly. It's very, very important that security and privacy are both delivered. This article I read this morning talked about the importance of, that companies were saying security is really important. The people who were surveyed for the article said privacy was really important in terms of embedding. In the European Union, Article 29 Working Party, which is the group that addresses privacy, they said that in terms of IoT, make privacy the default setting, follow privacy by design. And at last year's Commissioners Conference, the same kind of thing, but I love the line they developed. Privacy by design should be the key selling point of innovative technologies. They got it. Treat it as a positive. Privacy is not a negative. It's going to sell your products and services in the best way possible. I did not do that. Okay, let's keep going. So I think I've made it clear why you've got to do this. And there are so many issues relating to the engineering and scientific computing community that most engineers are so wrapped up in delivering the infrastructure, the hardware of IoT, that the abstract ideas such as privacy, gone. I talk to a lot of computer groups, engineering groups, and it's wonderful when I talk to them. No one has said to me they can't embed privacy into design. What do they say? They say, no one's talked to us about it. No one's put it on our radar that we're supposed to be doing this. So a lot of this is getting the messaging out. And if we don't get the message out, then we are going to have the perfect storm of privacy exposure. And I'm going to just skip through the next few slides because I want to get to the part on machine learning and algorithms. But you can have a copy of these slides if you're interested. These just show that people are very, very concerned about privacy. Never before have I seen stats, 91%, 90% of the public saying they're concerned about their privacy and they don't know what to do about it. So ever since Edward Snowden's revelations, privacy concern at an all-time high, distrust is at an all-time high. And one of the things you can do, you can minimize the data collection in terms of the personal identifiers linked to the data. There are so many things you can do to de-identify data. I talk about the myth of zero risk because some people say to me, well, you can never eliminate risk completely if you de-identify data, so don't bother. And I say, are you kidding me? Where in the world do you have zero risk? Nowhere. You tell your child, don't cross the street without looking at both sides for cars. Don't speak to strangers, and you pray that that happens. Things happen. There's no such thing as zero risk, but there's a hell of a lot we can do to minimize risk dramatically, and we can minimize it to levels that are comparable to the likelihood of being hit by lightning, which I would think is an acceptable risk. I still go outside when it snows, rains, etc. I have a lot of papers you can take a look at that talk about the strength of de-identification, especially if you use strong de-identification protocols combined with a risk of re-identification framework. You can reduce the risk of re-identification dramatically. Re-ID concerns are overstated. Anonymized data can, and in many circumstances, be used without fear of re-identification. And these are some of the papers we've done. Let me talk about machine learning and AI. I'm so excited about this. What are we going to do about AI? It's amazing. It's dramatic. Can we do this? Can we place our confidence in this? We have to. And I think that's what I want to tell you, is artificial intelligence is amazing and it's just starting, growing. Let's make sure we embed privacy into the process so it doesn't stunt its growth and leads to positive outcomes. 3 years ago, the data scientists of the world have an international conference. It happened to be in Canada 3 years ago in Montreal. And I noticed this in an article in our national newspaper that 88% of the data scientists said that consumers should worry about privacy issues associated with data science and predicated on the use of machine learning algorithms. And they said, and we have to have a framework developed for data protection and privacy. Now, I knew when I read that, they didn't know about my world, because why should they? I don't know much about their world. So I contacted the head of the organization, and I told them about my world. Fair information practices, privacy by design, data regulators and privacy commissioners around the world, blah, 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 things we can do to embed privacy. The person responded immediately. He said, this is wonderful. We didn't know about this. Can we work together? Can you do a monthly blog for us? And I started working with them. And it was beautiful because data scientists, brilliant, all of you guys are so smart. And what they said to me was, no one's put this on our radar in terms of how we can do both. Let's do both. And I think that's the most important thing. Now you're getting a lot of articles that are saying algorithms are discriminating. You're getting comments like this from the Global Commission on Internet Governance. Algorithms are not necessarily neutral. Now, all of a sudden, there's a negative focus on algorithms. And forgive me, I did not say AI's white guy problem, but that's the title of the article. And it talked about how important it was to be vigilant about how we design and train these machine learning systems, or we will be ingrained with bias built into the AI of the future. Obviously, nobody wants that. So I'm asking you all, please, Think of privacy and the areas you're involved with in a positive sum way. We want to abandon zero-sum. It is not an either-or proposition. The tyranny of algorithms, and I'm almost done. I love the heading, the tyranny of algorithms, because it was all about algorithms are taking over and they're biased and they're going to take us down this road. Nonsense. We can put controls into this now. If we address these issues now and embed them, get rid of zero-sum, substitute positive sum, we can do this. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with, I have just organized, just starting a new international council to deal with some of these issues. And where is it? I had a new, okay, it's not captured here. I had a new slide presentation, but it didn't get captured. No problem. Let me tell you about this, and I've got flyers if any of you are interested. It's called International Council on Global Privacy and Security by Design. It's all about spreading the word globally that you have to do both. You have to do privacy and fill in the blank. In the area of machine learning, artificial intelligence, you have to embed privacy into the process. We can do both. Please consider joining my international council. All you have to do is send me an email, and it's all about just the mindset that you are indeed interested in abandoning zero-sum propositions. So, ladies and gentlemen, please consider all of the things I've mentioned in terms of privacy. We can and must do both privacy and artificial intelligence, machine learning. We don't want any headings like the tyranny of algorithms. That's such a negative, and that will set us back. That's the exact opposite of where we want to go. We want to do both. We want to grow the world. We want to make sure freedom and prosperity in all that we do flourishes as opposed to shrinking. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.